Chapter 1. The call came at 4:17 in the morning. Shaun Sweeney had been awake before the phone vibrated across the nightstand, though he could not have said what woke him. One moment he was asleep beside his wife. The next he was staring into the dark with the uneasy certainty that something had changed. Then the phone lit up. The caller ID read, Claiborne County Dispatch. Beside him, Tish shifted beneath the covers. "You getting that?" she murmured. Shaun reached for the phone. "Yeah?" He kept his voice low as he answered. "Sweeney?" The dispatcher was young, but Shaun recognized the strain in her breathing before she spoke. "Detective, Sheriff Ward needs you at the old Route 9 substation." Shaun sat up. The substation had been abandoned for nearly 15 years. It was little more than a concrete box tucked between a wooded hillside and an unused section of county road. Teenagers occasionally broke in. Hunters sometimes parked nearby. Nothing happened there that required the lead detective before sunrise. "What do we have?" "A deceased male, possible homicide." "Identification?" There was a pause. "Sheriff said she wants to tell you herself." Tish was awake now. She watched him from her side of the bed. Shaun swung his feet onto the floor. "I'm on my way." He ended the call and reached for the jeans folded across the back of a chair. "Who is it?" Tish asked. "They wouldn't say." "That's not good." "No." She turned on the lamp. Soft yellow light filled the bedroom, illuminating the framed photographs arranged across the dresser. Shaun and Tish at their wedding, both of them younger and thinner. Their older daughter, Shantae, known to everyone as Tay, holding up her first fishing trophy. Their younger daughter, Cherokee, grinning through missing front teeth in a picture taken years ago. Shaun pulled on a dark button-up shirt and fastened his holster. Tish sat against the headboard. "You want a drink?" "I'll get some at the station." "That means no." Shaun glanced at her. She knew him too well. "I'll text you when I know something." "You said that the last time." "I did text." 8 hours later. Shaun leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I'll do better." Tish gave him a tired look that said she had heard that promise before. Outside, the July air was already warm and wet. Mist hung low over the hollows, turning the distant security lights into pale blurs. Shaun climbed into his county-issued SUV and pulled away from the house without using the siren. Briar Ridge slept around him. The town was small enough that Shaun could drive from one end to the other in less than 10 minutes when the roads were empty. The courthouse clock glowed above the dark square. A gas station near the highway was open, its parking lot occupied by one tractor-trailer and a deputy's cruiser. Shaun passed both without slowing. Route 9 curved out of town and climbed toward the eastern ridge. Houses became fewer, separated by steep driveways and thick stands of poplar and oak. Morning had not yet reached the mountains. The trees formed black walls on either side of the road. The old substation appeared around the next bend. 2 patrol cars blocked the gravel entrance. Red and blue lights pulsed silently against the trees. Shaun parked behind the sheriff's SUV and stepped out. Deputy Caleb Mullins stood near the tape with a clipboard pressed against his chest. He was 26, broad-shouldered, and still carried himself with the stiff alertness of someone who had not been in uniform long enough to become comfortable in it. "Morning, Detective." "Who found him?" "2 boys." Mullins glanced toward the building. "They came up here to drink, saw the side door open, and went inside." "Where are they?" "In Deputy Hall's cruiser. Parents are on the way." "Did they touch anything?" "They say no." Shaun looked at him. Mullins lowered the clipboard slightly. "They probably touched the door." "Anyone else enter?" "The sheriff, Patrick, me and Hall, but only far enough to confirm the body." "Keep the log complete. Nobody crosses the tape without signing." "Yes, sir." Shaun ducked beneath the yellow line. The old substation had been built during a brief period when county officials believed Claiborne County would grow toward the highway. It never did. Budget cuts closed the building less than 5 years after it opened. Time had not been kind to it. Moss spread across the lower concrete blocks. One gutter hung loose from the roof. Weeds pushed through cracks in the small parking lot. The sheriff's department emblem had been removed from the front wall, but its faded outline remained. Sheriff Ellen Ward waited just inside the entrance. She was in her early 50s, with short, gray-streaked hair and the permanent expression of someone who had already considered 3 ways a situation could become worse. She had been sheriff for 6 years, and Shaun's supervisor for 9. This morning, she looked older. Shaun? The way she said his name answered the question dispatch had refused to answer. Who is it? Ward looked through the open doorway leading deeper into the building. Ray Hensley. For a moment, Shaun heard nothing. Not the police radio murmuring from outside. Not the soft movements of the crime scene team. Not the insects screaming in the weeds beyond the walls. Only the name. That's not possible. Ward's expression did not change. I identified him myself. Shaun stared at her. Ray had eaten dinner at Shaun's house 3 weeks earlier. He had argued with Tay about college football and helped Cherokee fix a loose chain on her bicycle. He had sent Shaun a joke by text 2 days ago, something about a rookie deputy and a runaway goat. Shaun had not answered it. Where? Ward nodded toward the rear hallway. Shaun started forward. Shaun, she caught his arm. Before you go in, I need to ask whether you can handle this scene. He looked down at her hand and then back at her. I'm the lead detective. You were his partner 8 years ago. You were his friend yesterday. Shaun pulled his arm free, more sharply than he intended. I can handle it. Ward studied him for several seconds. All right, but if Patrick or I tell you to step out, you step out. Shaun continued down the hallway. The building smelled of damp concrete, dust, and something faintly chemical. Old office doors stood open on either side. Most of the furniture had been removed years ago, leaving pale rectangles on the stained carpet. A portable light had been positioned outside the former interview room. Patrick Doyle stood beside it, pulling a pair of gloves over his hands. Patrick was in his mid-40s and built like a man who had eaten one too many donuts. He wore a gray crime scene cover all over his clothes, and a camera hung from a strap around his neck. He stepped in front of Shaun before Shaun could reach the door. You've been briefed? Ray. Patrick nodded once. I need to see him. You need gloves and shoe covers. Shaun held out his hands. Patrick gave him both, watching while he put them on. The boys found him around 3:40, Patrick said. No obvious disturbance outside. Side entrance was unlocked. We haven't completed the initial sweep. Cause of death? Not yet. Gunshot? No. Stabbing? No visible wounds from the doorway. Shaun looked past him. Patrick moved aside. Ray Hensley sat in the middle of the interview room. For one confused second, Shaun expected him to move. Ray was seated upright in an old metal chair, his shoulders resting against the back. His hands had been secured in front of him with steel handcuffs. His gray hair was combed neatly, and he wore a clean white shirt beneath a dark sport coat. A second chair faced him from across a narrow table. It looked like an interrogation. Ray's head leaned slightly toward his right shoulder. His eyes were closed. There was no blood on his clothing and no visible injury to his face. He could have been sleeping. Then Shaun saw the color of his skin. He stopped at the threshold. Images came without invitation. Ray laughing in the passenger seat of their old, unmarked Crown Victoria. Ray standing beside Shaun at the hospital after Tay was born. Ray teaching Cherokee to cast a fishing line from the bank of Paintsville Lake. Ray at Shaun's kitchen table 3 weeks earlier, telling Tish her meatloaf was the only reason he kept visiting. Shaun forced the memories away. He was not here as Ray's friend. He was here because someone had killed him. When was he last seen? Shaun asked. "We're still working on that," Patrick said. "His truck is behind the building." "Phone?" "Not on him." "Wallet?" "Back pocket, cash still inside." Shaun stepped carefully into the room. The walls were bare except for a cracked observation window and a strip of darker paint where a bulletin board had once hung. Dust covered most of the table. Most of it. A clean, rectangular space lay directly in front of Ray. Something had rested there recently. Shaun leaned closer without touching it. What was on the table? "Nothing when we entered," Patrick said, "but something was." Shaun studied Ray's hands. The cuffs had been fastened with the keyholes facing outward. No signs of hurried restraint. No obvious bruising around the wrists. Whoever had done this knew how to apply handcuffs. Shaun moved toward Ray's left side. That was when he saw the pin. It had been fastened to the lower edge of Ray's coat collar. Black enamel, gold border. A small shield at the center, surrounded by a wreath. The crest was upside down. Shaun stopped breathing. Patrick noticed his reaction. "You know it?" Shaun did not answer immediately. The room had changed. It was no longer an abandoned interview room in the hills outside Briar Ridge. It was a decaying vocational building 12 years earlier. Rain hammered a sheet metal roof. A retired academy instructor lay dead beneath a broken window. A black and gold pin rested under a chair. Then another room, 4 years later. A dead man on a kitchen floor. Another pin inside a desk drawer, its crest inverted. Then the third body. The one that had finally made Shaun understand. 3 deaths. 3 scenes. 3 pins. Years between them, but the same careful hands behind each one. Patrick followed Shaun's gaze. "Shaun?" "He's back." "Who?" Shaun looked at Ray. "The man who did the Mercer, Vance, and Caldwell murders." Patrick's eyes shifted to the pin. "You're sure?" "Yes. We never proved those 3 were connected." "I did." "You suspected?" Shaun turned toward him. "That pin was at every scene." "The first one belonged to the victim." "That's what we assumed." "The second was found 6 months after the initial search." "Because nobody knew to look for it." Patrick's jaw tightened. "And the third?" "The third was placed upside down, exactly like this one." Patrick said nothing. Shaun crouched beside the body, careful not to touch Ray or the chair. "Same positioning," he said. "Body cleaned. No obvious trauma. Controlled scene. The chair across from him. The other scenes didn't have a second chair." "No, this is different." "Or it's a copycat." "It isn't." "You can't know that yet." Shaun stared at the inverted crest. He knew. For 12 years he had imagined the man behind the first death. For 8 he had searched for a connection that no one else believed existed. 4 years ago, when the third body appeared, the sheriff had finally authorized a formal task force. It lasted 11 months. Then the leads dried up. No address, no employer, no confirmed vehicle, no reliable witness, no financial trail, no digital history. The killer appeared, selected a victim, and vanished so completely that Shaun sometimes wondered whether he had built the connection out of grief and stubbornness. But the pin was here, and Ray was dead. Shaun rose slowly. "Call Steve." Patrick glanced at the dusty room. "For what?" "Ray's truck, his house, every device he owned. I want his movements for the last 72 hours. Cameras, cell towers, card purchases, vehicle data." "It's not 5 o'clock yet." "He'll answer." Patrick gave him a look that almost became sympathy. Shaun did not want sympathy. He wanted the man who had done this. Sheriff Ward entered the room, but remained near the doorway. "You recognize the signature?" she asked. Shaun nodded. Then you're not staying lead. His eyes snapped toward her. Sheriff? You're too close. I was already close. He made sure of that 12 years ago. This is Ray. Exactly. Ward's voice softened, which only made Shaun angrier. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than anyone else in this building. I know these cases. You believe you know them. I was right. Maybe, but you don't get to decide that alone. Shaun stepped toward her. Who are you going to give it to? Mullins? State police? Someone who has to spend a week reading reports before they know what they're looking at? I haven't decided. The killer chose Ray because of me. Patrick and Ward exchanged a glance. Shaun saw it. What? Ward folded her arms. Why would you say that? Because Ray was my partner. Because the last confirmed victim was connected to my academy class. Because whoever did this knows I'll recognize the pin. That doesn't mean Ray was killed because of you. No, but it means the killer expected me to be here. The thought settled heavily in the room. From outside came the sound of another vehicle pulling onto the gravel. Patrick looked toward the hallway. Probably the coroner. Shaun stared at Ray again. Where's his truck? Behind the building, Patrick said. I want to see it. Not until I finish photographing this room. I'm not touching anything. That's what everyone says. Shaun turned and walked out. The sun had not risen, but the eastern sky was beginning to lighten behind the ridge. Deputies moved quietly around the property. A county coroner's van had parked beside the tape. Ray's truck sat near the rear of the building, angled toward the tree line. It was an older blue Ford pickup, washed regularly but dented along the passenger side. Shaun had ridden in it dozens of times. He knew there should be a Claiborne County High School booster sticker in the back window and a coffee cup wedged into the center console. Both were there. Steve arrived 11 minutes later. He pulled up in a dark sedan, stepped out carrying a laptop bag, and looked toward Shaun. Steve Woods was in his mid-40s, tall, broad, and usually difficult to impress. He wore jeans, boots, and a wrinkled black polo shirt, as though he had dressed while walking out the door. You look terrible, Steve said. Ray Hensley is dead. Steve stopped. The humor left his face. What happened? Homicide. Academy pin on the body. Steve looked toward the substation. The same pin? The same. Damn. Shaun pointed toward the pickup. Patrick hasn't cleared it yet. When he does, I need everything. Phone? Missing. Ray used cloud backup? Probably. He hated technology, but he listened when you scared him about losing his fishing pictures. That was a legitimate concern. Shaun almost smiled. Almost. Patrick came around the corner carrying his camera. Truck's photographed. Exterior only so far. Steve held up both hands. I'll wait until you bless it. Patrick gave him a flat look. That would be a first. They worked in silence once the doors were opened. Patrick photographed the interior. Shaun stood several feet away and watched. Steve leaned through the passenger side without touching anything, scanning for devices or cables. The truck appeared ordinary. Coffee cup, receipts, a folded rain jacket, a half-empty bottle of water, fishing tackle on the back floor. Patrick opened the glove compartment. Registration papers, insurance card, 2 pins, an old revolver manual, nothing else. Steve moved to the rear of the truck and raised the cover over the bed. Spare is underneath? He asked. Mounted below, Shaun said. Steve crouched near the rear bumper, then paused. What? There's fresh dirt on this bolt. Patrick joined him. The metal fastener holding the access panel beneath the bed had been recently disturbed. Its edges were bright where a tool had scraped away rust. Patrick photographed it before removing the panel. Inside was a narrow storage space beside the spare tire assembly. A black plastic case had been taped to the frame. Shaun stared at it. That Ray's? No idea, Patrick said. He cut the tape, opened the case, and revealed a small prepaid phone. Steve exhaled through his nose. Well, he said, Ray didn't hate technology as much as he claimed. Patrick photographed the phone in place, then transferred it into an evidence bag. Can you get into it? Shaun asked. Eventually. How long? Steve looked at him. You know I hate that question. Try hating it quickly. By 7:30, the sun had cleared the ridge. Ray's body had been removed. The teenagers who found him had been taken home. News vehicles had begun gathering near the county road, despite Sheriff Ward's attempt to keep the victim's identity quiet. Shaun sat at a folding table inside the substation's former reception area, while Steve worked from a laptop connected to the prepaid phone. Patrick moved between rooms, collecting samples. Sheriff Ward had not officially removed Shaun from the case. She had not officially left him in charge either. For the moment, he existed in the space between those decisions. Steve typed, waited, typed again. Anything? Shaun asked. Still working. You said that 20 minutes ago. And 20 minutes ago, it was also true. Shaun stood and walked to the front window. Outside, a reporter from the Briar Ridge Gazette spoke into a camera. Ray's name would be public soon. Tish would see it online before Shaun could explain. Tay and Cherokee would wake to messages from friends. He took out his phone. Ray's last message remained unread in the conversation list. Shaun opened it. It was a photograph of a goat standing on the hood of a patrol car. The message read, Found Mullen's new partner, smarter than the last one. Shaun stared at the screen. He typed the message to Tish. Shaun's message read, It's Ray. He's dead. I'm okay. Please tell the kids before they see it online. He read the lie in the middle and sent it anyway. Behind him, Steve stopped typing. Shaun? Something in his voice made Shaun turn. Steve had opened a folder from the prepaid phone. Dozens of image thumbnails filled the screen. What is it? I'm not sure yet. Shaun walked over. The photographs appeared to have been taken inside the Claiborne County Sheriff's Office. Evidence shelves, property forms, sealed plastic bags, cash spread across a desk. In one image, Ray stood inside the evidence room. The date stamp was 6 years old. Ray's back was partially turned toward the camera. In his hands was an open evidence envelope. Several bundles of cash lay beside it. Shaun leaned closer. That could be from a case. Maybe, Steve said. He opened the next image. Ray placed one bundle inside his coat. The next photograph showed him resealing the envelope. Shaun felt the room tilt slightly. No. Steve said nothing. That's not what it looks like. I haven't said what it looks like. Ray worked evidence sometimes. He could have been transferring it into his jacket. There could be an explanation. Steve opened the text file stored with the photographs. It contained dates, case numbers, payment amounts, and initials. One of the case numbers belonged to an investigation Shaun remembered. A drug arrest. A young man named Daniel Cole had been convicted after Ray testified that he found pills hidden beneath the driver's seat. Shaun had been at the scene. He had trusted Ray's search. Near the bottom of the file was a line containing two names. One line read, R. Hensley, S. Sweeney, present, unaware. Shaun read it twice. That a third time, the words did not change. Behind them, Patrick entered, carrying the Academy pin sealed inside a clear evidence bag. You need to see this, he said. Shaun could not look away from the screen. Patrick set the bag on the table. Manufacturer's mark on the back matches the pins issued to your Academy class. Steve looked from the pin to the photographs. Shaun stood between them, surrounded by evidence he did not yet understand. Ray had been murdered by the killer Shaun had hunted for more than a decade. Ray had also been hiding something. Something ugly. Something Shaun should have seen. On the screen, the photograph showed his former partner stealing from the evidence room, while Shaun worked only 2 doors away. The killer had not simply taken Ray's life. He had left Shaun a question. How well had he ever known the man? And somewhere beneath that question, darker and more personal, waited another. How well did Shaun Sweeney know himself?